I've had some really wacky ideas in the couple of months that I've run this channel. In some of them, I theorize that certain characters may be emanators, while in others, I talk about how certain factions aren't who they appear to be. One of the craziest, or maybe one of the best, depending on who you ask, is the one where I theorize that the main character in Honkai Star Rail is changing fate itself. Now, in that video, which you should watch by the way, I make this claim but don't really talk about how they are able to do it. Well, I've been thinking about it, and the recent 1.4 Heliobi event has given me a rather interesting idea. Something that may explain how the main character is able to forcibly change fate itself. But I warn you, it's kinda dumb. Before I talk more about it though, if you want to see more Honkai Star Rail content, do consider subscribing to the channel. The whole idea behind the main character changing fate is tied to their interactions with the stellaron hunters and is also hinted at throughout the story. There is also plenty of evidence that suggests that the future in Star Rail is predefined. Elio, for example, is said to be able to see all the possible futures and is said to have seen the very end of the universe itself. He believes that despite the many choices one can make, each person has a predefined destiny, and why he refers to himself as Destiny's slave. This goes alongside the speculation that he is associated with the Eon of Finality, who is also thought to be working towards achieving a very specific ending for the universe as a whole. When we meet up with Kafka on the Xianzhou Luofu right before her escape, there were also instances where Kafka challenged the main character to change fate, claiming it was impossible and that because of what Elio had told her, she knew beforehand what was going to happen. If you choose the right responses, however, it turns out even Kafka is shocked to see that certain outcomes could actually be changed. Aside from Elio and the Stellaron Hunters, Fushuan has also experienced the inability to change fate. Fushuan has long since believed that with enough effort and permutations, the art of divination can discern any potential future. She learned the hard way, however, that this just wasn't true, and at certain junctures in life, there is only ever one path and no amount of effort can materialize alternative options during such moments. Even amongst the gods themselves, especially like Fuli, the idea that the future has already been decided appears as a recurring theme. I've discussed each of these instances in other more detailed videos, but the point is that there is evidence that the story and its final outcome seems to be fixed, and that fate is something no one can change. This, however, seems to be an exception for the main character. While we have seen instances like the one with Kafka where the main character changes fate itself, we've never really known how they were able to achieve this. Are they secretly gods, or is there some scientific method we aren't aware of? Perhaps it has something to do with the stellaron embedded within them. Well, it's none of this. It's in fact the power of friendship. Now hold on, don't switch off just yet, give me a chance to at least explain myself. The power of friendship isn't an uncommon trope, unfortunately. If you've watched any anime or read a comic book, I'm sure you've come across this trope at least once. The hero is all but defeated but gains that last bit of power to defeat their foes because of the support and bonds they have with their friends. It's sickening, I know, especially when it's mishandled. But something in the 1.4 Heliobi story event may indicate that this is indeed what is happening. When Fushuan was possessed by a Heliobus, it was able to draw out her anxiety and fear related to not being able to change the future. During that encounter, the possessed Fushuan states that it's pointless to fight against one's fate, and no matter what happens, there are going to be moments where only one outcome is possible. Qingcui, of all people, manages to prove the possessed Fushuan wrong, and showed that with the help of some friends, options or choices can be manifested, and thus fate can be changed or circumvented. This made me wonder, what if this is the mechanism in which the main character is able to affect change? Think about what the Stellaron Hunters are doing. During Kafka's interrogation, we learn that the only motive the Hunters have for being on the Xianzhou Luofu is to instigate events in such a way that would lead the Xianzhou Alliance to be indebted to the main character and ally with them. The reason they are doing this is so that the main character would have the necessary allies to face Nanook, the Eon of Destruction. At least that's what they claim. On the surface, this might just be a numbers thing. If the main character were to fight a god, having an army to back them up would make sense. But what if it's more complicated than that? What if the number of allies the main character would have in the future would allow them to forcibly change fate by affecting the main source of power in the universe, the paths themselves? This is where the theory starts spiraling out of control, but just stick with me, we're almost towards the end. The paths are said to be a collection of imaginary energy and are basically manifestations of philosophical concepts. It's not outright stated, but likely that each sentient creature contributes to the paths in some way, whenever they act in accordance to the philosophy that the path is made up of. For example, the path of destruction is likely continuously fueled by any action or emotion that is similar in nature to that of destruction. So imagine if at some point, the main character gains enough followers that as a group, they are able to affect change in the paths themselves. Could they perhaps supercharge a particular path or even drain one of its energies? It's almost akin to another type of trope we often see in modern media, the trope of hope. Perhaps sometime in the future, the main character will have so many allies on their side that they can fuel the existence of a new path or even change an existing one, and maybe this is exactly what the stellaron hunters are aiming for. With enough people all acting or thinking in the same way, it may be possible to create a new path or change the way one works entirely. This may be what allows the main character to increasingly affect how fate works. The paths, which are made up of imaginary energy, is the fundamental building block of the universe. I would imagine that given enough control over it, an individual can do practically anything within the Star Rail universe. At this stage though, given their story just began, the main character could likely only do this on a smaller scale, but who knows? Perhaps in the future they can extend their influence to the universe as a whole. Now if you've made it this far, I have to congratulate you on your perseverance. I am aware how wacky this sounds, so I'd like to remind you that this is a theory at best, something fun to just think about. I don't personally like the idea that friendship of all things, a largely nebulous thing, can affect universal change on that level, and I hope this isn't the case. That said, don't take it too seriously as it's a shot in the dark to begin with. Despite that, I still thought the idea was interesting enough to share with all of you and why I'm making this video. Let me know in the comments if you think this might become true or perhaps you have an alternative idea. If you enjoyed the video, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and as usual, have a nice day.